And Blue Deal for Local and Regional Sustainable Development, which is organized by the Secretary General for Environment and Waters Management of the Ministry of Environment, Mr. Kωνσταντίνος Αραβώση. He is coming in cooperation with NTUA in the framework of this conference and in a joint venture with Researchers' Night events. The moderator of this panel is my good friend George Kremlis. I am honored he is here from the European Commission as honorary director concerning all these protocols and projects on environment. And of course, he is chair of the Bureau for Strategies for Environmental Assessment and the Green Deal. I invite Papagiannidis Dimitris, Secretary General of Agricultural Ministry, Hadjipetru Athina, a very good friend, the President of the Hellenic Development Bank. You see her here. The Mayor of Chalki, the island of Chalki, Mr. Evangelos Fragakis, and our President of the Technical Chamber of Greece in Dodekanis, Mr. Antonis Yannikouris. You may start, dear George.
Thank you very much, Professor Moropoulou. It is a privilege and a pleasure to be the moderator of this panel with distinguished speakers. And before starting, I would like to congratulate you for this major conference that you have organized, notwithstanding the pandemic constraints. We were very happy to be here, I think it was 2 years ago, for the same conference, which was a very successful one, and I do believe that this will also be a very successful conference. Now, I see that according to the program, you are the first speaker, unless it was an introductory speech on your side.
Invite me later on, after the presentation of the video of the Secretary General on energy. And
so we will follow now the order of the panel that I have the pleasure to moderate. The first speaker is Alexandra Aldoukou, who is the Secretary General of Energy and Mineral Raw Materials at the Ministry of Environment and Energy of Greece. She has provided us with a video, so I believe the video can now be projected.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me, even through the screen. What if I would argue that both cultural and natural heritage can be benefited by the European Green Deal package? In the Ministry of Environment and Energy, we say a lot and do more on our natural heritage, which is increasingly vulnerable, of course, due to the adverse effects of global climate change. But now, all these gradual changes in the temperature, in precipitation, in atmospheric moisture, or wind intensity, or sea level rise, all these events already also affect the cultural heritage sites. It was exactly this concern that made us focus on a dedicated policy for the isolated islands of Greece, which have an extremely high cultural and natural value. Think of what a driving force they constitute for the Greek economy by attracting thousands of visitors every year who enjoy their beautiful landscapes and hospitality. And of course, due to this commercial significance, the risk of their environmental degradation is quite serious. So we came up with the GRECO Islands initiative, the Greco Islands. It is an initiative of the Greek government for the transformation of Greek islands into models of green economy and sustainable development, but under a strict condition: the engagement of local communities in pursuing sustainable growth and an eventual adoption, of course, of a responsible attitude towards their natural and cultural environment. Our vision is to make Greco Islands a global paradigm of sustainable development. As you already know, the initiative inaugurated in a small and isolated island called Chalki, and is due to be extended to other Greek islands, starting first with those that share similar characteristics. I mean, small, remoted, that suffer from double insularity, that produce the energy they consume from a dirty fuel, thus emitting CO2 in their atmosphere. Those islands, they need to try harder to achieve the energy transition. But also, I will mention the example of the Astypala Island. We have started, as you know, a pilot project for sustainable mobility in cooperation with the Volkswagen Group. In the long run, Astypala will become a model island for climate neutral mobility. You see, the sustainable development of an isolated place is closely related to the preservation of cultural and natural heritage, because if the living conditions get improved, it will be much easier for the inhabitants in these areas to stay in their place of origin and preserve their legacy. And we are happy that we have both the legal and regulatory framework as well, but also the financial tools to materialize such innovative green projects in Greece. But also, let me tell you that these projects attract the private sector interest, and with great pleasure, we have seen large companies from Greece and the rest of Europe to support such initiatives via their social responsibility programs. Many more have expressed interest in participating to the upcoming respective projects. So it is now more apparent than ever that the cultural and natural assets of Greece can be definitely preserved and further deployed. We have the tools, we have the means, we have the money. So it's on our hands, the hands of all stakeholders, the academia, policy and decision makers to work with appetite and leave a tangible footprint. Enjoy the fruitful discussions of the conference.
I would like to thank Alexandra Zdoukou for this thorough video speech. She has been instrumental as regards the Green Islands Initiative, not only Astypalea, but also Chalki, and the more general Green Islands initiatives, as islands have to decarbonize. We have the 5 municipalities in Western Macedonia and in the Peloponnese that have to phase out from lignite. When it comes to our islands, Crete, Northern and South Aegean, they have to phase out from mazout, from oil, and become green islands. So this is an extremely important initiative which requires the promotion of renewable sources of energy, and we do have many on our islands: sun, wind, tides, the energy from the waves, and of course storage is a key element for this type of hybrid projects that needs to be promoted. And last but not least, islands are also extremely important for the development of hydrogen pilot projects that could be promoted there. So this was a very important initiative, and I would like to thank once again Alexandra also for her contribution as regards the climate law, the Greek climate law, which is currently under public consultation. You can still send your comments until the 24th of December. This is an ambitious piece of legislation which covers the full range of all the issues, including the cultural dimension, which is extremely important, and of course the Green Islands Initiative. I would like now to give the floor to the next speaker, sitting to my left, Ms. Hadjipetru Athina, the President of the Hellenic Development Bank. The floor is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friend Tonya. It is a great pleasure to be part of a panel with such distinguished scientists and representatives. As a former president of the board of directors of the Archaeological Resources Fund, 2 years ago I was in the same conference representing the Archaeological Resources Fund, and as a quite recent holder of an MA in Heritage Management, culture and the preservation of monuments was and will be part of my professional life. Today, in my current role as President of the Board of Directors and CEO of the Hellenic Development Bank, culture still holds and will hold a valuable place in my life, and I hope we will create the environment, the financial prospects to support. I truly believe that through our financial products and initiatives, culture and our heritage should be further supported. And let's start with one of the defining tasks of our century, climate change. This fact has already been an increasing and lasting impact in the economies and the society overall. The effects of climate change, with the increasing frequency of extreme weather events, with the long-lasting events, and the speed of these phenomena are even more evident and alarming. Cultural heritage is no way spared. Europe has a rich landscape and invaluable mosaic of cultural heritage and is greatly exposed to that fact to environment risks. Iconic and historical sites that testify humanity's great past face an uncertain future as the effects of climate change evolve. However, heritage is not about buildings and statues, not only. Landscapes are also negatively affected since there is a strong relation between temperature and preservation of land and species. What we have done until now? There was an action plan in 1995 entitled Conservation of Landscapes that has been presented in Sofia. In 2015, the role of culture and heritage has been a sustainable development recognition by the United Nations in the 2030 Agenda and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals. In addition to that, there is the Paris Agreement, a landmark in the multilateral climate change process, because for the first time there is a binding agreement that brings all nations into a common cause to undertake ambitious efforts to combat climate change and adapt its effects. As such, we have a responsibility, a main responsibility, to protect and preserve the environment and natural resources for the present and for the future generations. Cultural heritage today is particularly central to Green Deal strategies focused on Europe's urban and rural landscapes, such as the Innovation Wave and the new European Bauhaus. The European Green Deal defines the measures that need to be taken through the efficient use of resources to tackle climate and environmental-related changes, and more, we are focusing on a clean and circular economy. Greece, let's go to Greece, to our country, has been allocated an important amount of funding from the RRF, a historical opportunity, I may say, for the country's economy and production model restructuring. Building on the EU Green Deal, it is critical and vital that Greece achieves a green economic transformation in a more prosperous, equitable, and sustainable path. The Green government has set ambitious and clear goals to face the environmental challenges as stated in Greece's 2.0 plan towards a more competitive and greener productive model. Such investments will be in renewable energy, electricity network, we just heard Mrs. Doukou, local urban plans, national reforestation, disaster management and civil protection systems. These are among the many plans we have. Now, where is our role as Hellenic Development Bank? Hellenic Development Bank is the national promotional institution authorized to provide leverage in state funds. Our mission is primarily to support micro, small, and medium enterprises by facilitating their access to financial resources, and we address, as well as we cover, the so-called market failures. The main role of Hellenic Development Bank is to intervene catalytically on the dynamic relationship among the state, the banks, the commercial banks, and the businesses. Unlike commercial banks, HDB is a multi-purpose functioning institution with credentials in counteracting financial crisis. During the COVID-19 crisis, HDB has significantly expanded, and I'll give you an impressive number. In 2020, we had 10 times more loans disbursed compared to the 5 years of 2014-2019, and 4 times more loans from the decade, 4 times more loans than the decade 2010-2019. We have conducted a GVA analysis where we have elaborated that our loan programs have doubled the effect on the GDP. We have added, in reality, 16,500 jobs through our products because we had a clause of retaining jobs. And there have been more than 200 job positions retained. Today, we are fully fledged operating bank in terms of human resources, digital platforms, financial products to support the Greek government and the financial institutions. In addition, we have enlarged our partnership so as to share best practices. We have partnership agreement with the equivalent institution in France, Banque Publique d'Investissement. We have cooperation with most of our chambers, with European Investment Bank, European Investment Fund, and EBRD. Greek companies, though, need to adapt to the challenges of a post-crisis world, and HDB, we believe that we are uniquely positioned to help them with this. How? Through targeted financial instruments that not only promote the access to finance and reduce the financial gap, but also support the necessary transformations. This is the key word in the future. By introducing eligibility criteria within the sustainability agenda. In addition, we are a trusted partner that provides data for policy making, so as the decision will be based on analysis on business intelligence and data mining. We effectively manage state funds, and we have a corporate philosophy that is characterized by our passion to be an effective manager of mandate funds using advanced technological systems and robust procedures. Until now, we have been able to keep our promise on doing things in an efficient and brisky way, and to channel our funds to those projects that generate positive economic, social, and environmental benefits for society. But now, we see an opportunity to support Greece's recovery, as we've said. On that note, we plan to launch new thematic, from now on, financial schemes that relate directly to energy efficiency and renewable energy, to digital transformation, and overall sustainable growth that will improve, that's what we believe, the access to finance of the Greek SMEs. Those financial tools will be complementing the RRF and will target, for example, the underperforming sectors, the underperforming regions in transitions. Currently, we have a product, Mrs. Moropoulou, with, because it has been mentioned, with region of Western Macedonia, It's a product of 20 million and supports SMEs. We have a product with the Chamber of Engineers of 70 million loans overall that is going also is supporting drastically the needs of our engineering freelancers. And we are about for 22 to have two pillar products. One will be a green fund for sustainable development for SMEs. Since most measures are geared towards large infrastructure projects in RRF, we want to introduce something for SMEs that will have an eligibility for finance, clean tech and startups, energy efficiency loans, boost supply of green service providers, for example, solar panels. In addition to that, because it's the main section of this Congress, is the Digital Guarantee Fund for Sustainable Development. We believe that digitalization is a key lever to enhancing SMEs' productivity and growth prospects. The Sustainable Development Goals are the what. The world is aiming for 2030, and digital technology will be central to shaping the how in terms of reaching this destination and accelerating action at scale. Today, the pressure for environmental responsibility mounts and sustainability can act as a catalyst for many SMEs to integrate digital technology into their business and effectively achieve their sustainability goals. Today, in Hellenic Development Bank, we are in the front run, having the proven record, the capacity, the ability to utilize funding resources so as to facilitate the growth of the economy. And we think that HDB now is in its full essence a development-oriented bank. We want and we are looking outside the box, we think outside the box, and we respond accordingly to finance the essence of our society in revealing and preserving cultural and natural assets. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hadjipetru, for this visionary speech. And thank you for what you have been doing and are doing in a personal capacity, and you will continue performing in a personal capacity, but also as the Hellenic Development Bank. We count on your cooperation, and now that Professor Arabossi, the Secretary General of Natural Environment and Water, is with us. He's also the co-organizer, together with Professor Moropoulou. They are colleagues at the Technical University of Athens, this important event. I would like to say a few words. You have initiated this discussion, the connection between the Green Deal and culture. Culture is now mainstreamed in the other policies of the European Union, and we need to promote this even more. I have the pleasure on behalf of the Greek Prime Minister to lead a Greek initiative at United Nations level together with UNESCO, the World Meteorological Organization, and the UNFCCC on addressing climate change impacts on cultural and natural heritage. A very important emblematic initiative supported by more than 100 UN countries. We had the pleasure in the context of COP26 to organize a side event with the participation of more than 10 ministers of environment and culture, key ministers from ancient civilizations who have highlighted this dimension. It has two pillars, the cultural pillar and the monuments of nature pillar. Therefore, it has a holistic scope. And of course, as we all know, both cultural heritage and natural heritage suffers a lot because of the climate crisis. This summer, Olympia, ancient Olympia, was threatened because of the fires. The other consequence of the fires in the winter are the floods. Therefore, we need to promote this dimension, and in that respect, the digital contribution through digital economy, and this is one of the very important components of this conference, is there to promote that, because what we wanted to do in the context of this international initiative is to provide a digital identity of the threatened sites and monuments, which will enable us to assess their state and to follow up the impacts of climate change on them, on the one hand, but also on promoting their climate resilience, because in reality, the climate impacts are there and they are felt more and more every day. So we need somehow to make our sites resilient, waterproof, I would say. This is one component, because we need to make them also fireproof. Therefore, a lot of things can be done, and in that respect, we also count on your support and the one of the Hellenic Development Bank, which is very important. Without ado, I would like now to give the speaker to the Secretary General, Professor Arabώsi, for his speech.
Thank you very much, Chair, and it is my great pleasure to be here, especially because it is an event that we have organized together with Professor Moropoulou as a post-event of the Researchers' Night at the National Technical University of Athens. So this is the second event. The previous one was organized in the Technical Chamber of Greece, with its cooperation, and so I'm very happy to be here. And let me start by mentioning the EU Green Deal. The EU Green Deal is something that is very crucial nowadays. We had the pandemic, we still have the pandemic problem. It is the problem of today, of the next months to come. But it is a problem that it is for sure that after some months it will be solved as all pandemics. But the real problem that we face now is the problem that has to do with climate change. It was believed that when the pandemic started, climate change issues and environmental issues would not be a priority anymore in the EU. There were some considerations about that, but now it has been proved that not only environmental problems and the climate change issue is not a priority. It is the first priority of the EU. It is central in the EU policies, and that is why the EU Green Deal remains and is very strong, a very ambitious policy of the EU, which in fact is the growth strategy of the EU for the next years to come. And here what we aim is to realize is a modern, resource-efficient and competitive EU economy with zero net emissions of greenhouse gases by 2050, and where economic growth is decoupled from resource use. So the main policy areas of the Green Deal are, first of all, to increase the EU climate ambition for 2030 and 2050. To supply a clean, secure, and affordable energy to all EU countries and citizens, to mobilize industry for a clean and circular economy, to build and renovate in a new way, a resource and efficient way for the EU economy to operate, and to accelerate the shift to sustainable and smart mobility, and also to preserve and restore ecosystems and biodiversity, also a central target of the EU policies. And also very important is that the EU Green Deal is the framework for the green transition, and there are detailed policies and measures that are still being worked, are still evolving, changing, improving, and are going to be integrated in the legislative network that we have in the EU and also in our national policies. On March 2020, the Commission adopted its proposal for a European climate law as part of a broader package of ambitious actions, and it was announced in the Commission's European Green Deal communication. And through this regulation, carbon neutrality target by 2050 became a legally binding policy. October 2020, the EU discussed the Commission's communication, and it has come to the new target of reducing greenhouse gases by at least 55% by 2030, and this is actually the main target for the next period to come. And these targets have to be achieved collectively by the EU member states on the most cost-effective manner. So there is a Green Deal investment package that is actually going to mobilize 1 trillion euros of sustainable investments between 2023 and 2030. It is a huge amount, but there will be another 1 to 2 trillion euros needed that will derive from the private sector and from the banking system. So in total, over 2.5 trillion euros by 2030 in order to achieve the EU target that I mentioned before. So there's a huge amount of money that has to be used and utilized in the next years to come in order to transform the EU policy, the EU economy into a circular, green, and digital mode. So there's also a just transition mechanism which provides targeted support to regions, workers, and sectors that are most affected by the transition towards the green economy. And here in Greece, we have these regions. It is the regions that are being affected by the delignitization policy that we have, that by 2028 we have to close down all lignite power plants, and even before that, because we will reconsider our policy by 2023 according, and the prerequisite is to secure our energy needs at any case. But even before 2028, we will close down our lignite plants. So there's this just transition fund for our country. It is around 5 billion euros in order to help the regions that are being affected by this, and to transform the economy, the local economy, into other directions. So there's a very specific plan with concrete actions and measures that have to be followed in order to achieve the EU targets. Apart from the Green Deal, there is also the Blue Deal, which is also something that we will discuss in our panel. The policy areas of the Green Deal include a blue dimension due to the key role of the seas and the oceans to mitigating climate change. And here there is a new approach for a sustainable blue economy in the EU, and the EU is going to adopt a new action plan to conserve fisheries resources and protect marine ecosystems in the context of the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030. In particular, the EU policy expands the network of marine protected areas to at least 30% at EU level in the biodiversity strategy for 2030. Also, there is an integration of fisheries and aquaculture products in the farm-to-fork strategy with the view of reinforcing the sustainable value chain in the fisheries sector. So, to include this sector in the circular economy approach. To revise the marine spatial planning legal framework to ensure that protected areas achieve the objectives upon which they were established. And strengthen the EU role as a global leader in ocean governance, including the trade dimension, and also to enhance financial and capacity resources to improve ocean science and marine knowledge on the marine environment and fish stock. And also to develop marine and freshwater sustainable aquaculture, which contributes to the food security in the EU. These are some of the policies that are included in the Blue Deal that affects our country also. So in our strategy, we put emphasis on that, and I will come to that now because I want to tell you what we are doing concerning Greece in our national level and our national plan. So we have very ambitious national targets. I have mentioned the delignitization plan and target, but in order to achieve that, we have a national energy and climate plan that is now being revised because there is a more ambitious target by 2030 to reduce the emission gases by 55% by 2030. So it is a revised plan with specific actions and policies for the next years to come by 2030. Also, there is a special emphasis on renewable energy sources that are going to be the substitute of lignite. The target is to have around 70% renewables in the mix by 2030. The transition energy will be natural gas, but this is the transition fuel, and the aim is, when the technology makes this possible, to have almost all our energy needs covered by renewables. And there, storage technologies will play a very important role in order to be able to achieve that. And we see that technology is improving rapidly, and we see that in the cost of renewable energies that goes down, that is even more competitive than the traditional energy sources. And so this is a very important target, together with energy efficiency improvement that we have. And also there we have the promotion of clean transport. Electromobility will play a crucial role in this. And also the interconnection of the Greek islands with the maintained electricity grid, which is very important for the optimal functioning of the electricity grid. So in order to further boost our decarbonization targets, there is now a new a new national climate law that is now under public consultation. We are expecting suggestions and proposals on that. It is a very ambitious plan, and it has concrete quantitative targets for a transition to climate neutrality by 2050, which is our main goal. And there we introduced tools and mechanisms, both for mitigation and adaptation to climate change. And there is a very close cooperation with the National Energy and Climate Plan. It goes hand in hand. And there's a commitment to the target neutrality, climate neutrality by 2050, as I mentioned. And there is also a new, very important measure that is being proposed to have, to introduce the carbon budget approach of individual sectors of the economy, the main 8 sectors of the Greek economy, that accounts to mainly for the greenhouse gases. And there we have a budget, the sector carbon budget tool, that will help intensify the possibilities and the prospects of each sector and contribute to the general overall climate progress of the country. In these sectors, electricity and heat generation is included, transport, industry, buildings, agriculture and livestock, waste, and land uses and land use changes and forestry. These main targets have a budget that is being revised each year. There's a 5-year plan, and we are going to monitor that very intensively through a governance mechanism. And there are other provisions in the National Climate Law. I don't want to go into details here, but it is the framework that we have for the next years to come in order to achieve our climate targets. I mentioned the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. That is a very important tool in order to have a smooth and transition to the new circular economy approach and to the new green economy that will not use fossil fuels anymore. And something else that is very important in our policies is that we now have a new circular economy national plan. It is a very ambitious plan. It has also, we have already started implementing that. We have already, some of the targets have already been achieved. It includes 72 targets with a certain timetable to achieve them for the next 4 years to come. And if this is being implemented, we see that we will have what we opt to have, a new circular economy approach in all sectors of the Greek economy. that is something very crucial. Dr. Kremlis is very familiar with that, and he has worked in this area a lot, and he knows that it is our main policy tool in order to achieve our environmental targets. And one of the first measures that we have taken is the adoption of the EU single-use plastics directive. We have already a ban on 8 types of single-use plastic products, and we have a plan to drastically reduce the rest. And this is going to happen in the next 4 years. In the next 4 years, there will be a drastic reduction of the single-use plastics products. And urgently, we are addressing plastic pollution. And there, the problem has to do also with the blue economy that I mentioned before, because 80% of marine litter consists of plastics, and the majority of that is single-use plastics products. We have a national marine strategy that is stated by our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, and it includes, among others, our commitment to the goal of protecting 30% of marine and coastal areas, to develop and implement maritime spatial planning for all Greek seas, introduce an integrated management of coastal zones and ecosystems, and to reduce plastic waste that I mentioned before, especially plastic that pollutes the sea by 50% by 2030. And there is also a spatial strategy for sustainable tourism development, so that tourism, which is the most important, I would say, engine of the economy, does not work, will work in what we are aiming in the sustainable way. Coming to the end, I would say that the European Green Deal and the recovery plan, the RRF, will define the economic model for the years to come. In Greece, we are very lucky, I would say, that for the next 4 years, we have huge funding. I would say it is the first time that we have at our disposal such a high quantity of funds, and one-third of the total, over one-third of the total EU budget of the RRF, of the Recovery Fund, but also of the ESPA budget, will be targeted to green investments, and especially environmental and energy-related investments. So we have a great opportunity to change our economy into the green circular way. Our problem is not to acquire funds, because they are there, and the problem is how to absorb these funds effectively. This is our main challenge for the next years to come. Our government has a plan for that, and we hope that if everything goes according to this plan, after the next 4 years, our Greek economy will really be the economy that we aim to have, an economy that will not only be sustainable and green, but it will be also competitive in a world, on a world basis. And the Greek enterprises, the Greek companies, if they adapt to that, they will really have a worldwide competitive advantage. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank Professor Arabvosis for this very thorough speech and for sharing with us the most recent developments at European level, Green Deal, Blue Deal, and at national level. And we are very proud to see that in Greece our Prime Minister has an extremely high level of ambition, that the government is promoting to the maximum the Green Deal, the European climate law, with a Greek draft climate law which is extremely ambitious, and of course with the Circular Economy Action Plan that Professor Arabvosis has developed. Congratulations for this. A very ambitious one which will transform the Greek economy from a linear economy to a circular economy with eco-innovation and with all the elements that are needed to ensure a smooth energy transition and a carbon neutrality. One word on the title of our panel, which refers also to social participation. The social dimension is extremely important, and we have noticed that on certain islands there was resistance in developing renewable energy sources, in particular wind turbines. It is extremely important to build social acceptance conditions through awareness raising, information, and I would say also incentives. Ms. Hadjipetrou has referred to that. This is a complex issue, but to ensure the energy transition, we need this communication strategy. We need to build, I repeat, social acceptance, and I do believe that circular economy has also a social circular economy component, which is a very important one. We shouldn't be working only on top-down, but also on a bottom-up process, joining forces, as combating climate change requires not only efforts at our country's level, but also efforts at each household, company. Ms. Hadjipetrou has referred to the environmental and social governance. I think we need to transform our companies. And last but not least, the funds are there, Secretary General, and the big challenge is how we will be able to absorb them effectively. You have used the word effectively, and with a strong added value. It is not simply an absorption exercise. We need to prepare project pipelines that will ensure the added value that these funds try to serve. I would like now to give the floor to the next speaker, Mr. Dimitrios Papagiannidis, who is the Secretary General of Union Resources and Infrastructure at the Ministry of Rural Development and Food. Dimitri, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Moropoulou and the organizers for the invitation, which gives me the opportunity to present some of the Ministry's ambitious priorities concerning isolated areas development with social participation, including Green Deal and Blue Deal strategic objectives. The development for isolated areas is a European Union central policies choices as Green Deal and Blue Deal for environmental protection and tackling climate changing effects constitute the roadmap for the coming years at the local and the regional level, as they promote important reforms and intervention concerning the existing development and production model. These strategies affect all areas of economic activity in the Union, included agriculture and fisheries, who are our sector, thus determining the future of EU rural areas. They also highlight the need for green and digital transformation of Union's agri-food system, setting out individual policies and objectives which will ensure that the desired transition will take place in a sustainable, fair, transparent, efficient, and balanced way. And this will be done on terms that will ensure Union's food adequacy and food security. Second, production of high quality and nutritional value products. Third is participation of all agro-supply chain stakeholders, as well as rural areas residents, without exclusions in economic and social terms. And of course, attracting young people to agriculture, fisheries, and to our rural areas. The Green Deal and Blue Deal goals must be taken into account in the architecture of the new common agricultural and fishery policies and our national strategic plan in the ministry for the coming period, which our ministry is preparing and through which we expect to achieve a green transition. The 5 main priorities axes for our strategic plans are this. First priority is consultation, information, and awareness of farmers and rural areas population about the opportunities and benefits of green transition at economic, environmental, and social level. Second priority is providing advisory support services to our farmers and fishermen in order to strengthen sustainability, improve competitiveness, and modernize Greek agriculture and fisheries. Our third priority is providing education and training, improving capacity of human resources, and developing new skills and knowledge of using green and digital technologies. Third priority is providing funds and opportunities to promote sustainable investment in innovation and new technologies in agriculture and fisheries, which serve the green transition and the digital economic goals, using modern financial tools to support sustainable development. In this direction, we plan investment in agriculture that aim, first, the national and sustainable management of national resources by investing in renewable energy sources, precision agriculture, agro-environmental friendly farming practices, through policy measures. Especially irrigation water management is one of the most important challenges we face due to the climate crisis. So we plan intervention that will aim at increasing efficiency and its natural use, the utilization of surface runoff, the reduction of losses through modernization of irrigation networks, and the introduction of advanced irrigation systems and practices. To this end, we have already prepared a size that we never faced before and scope master plan of major land improvement intervention, which we named Water 2.0, through which we expect to change the map of the country's rural infrastructure in the coming years. Additional public infrastructure in agriculture will be involved in the development of an effective warming system for any danger and threatens farm and food consumers, as for example extreme weather conditions, animal and plant disease, national disasters, etc., given the urgent need of tackling effects of climate changes as well as health crisis. On the other hand, the private investment in isolated areas we are planning will contribute to the adoption of innovation, new technologies, and renewable energy sources in order to reduce input cost, improving economic efficiency, and facilitate agricultural hoarding, restructuring, and modernization, promote processing into products with comparative advantage. At the same time, private investments will improve farms' environmental performance through more efficient utilization of natural resources and especially irrigation water, as well as more rational use of fertilizer, antibiotics, and so on. Such investment could be, for example, adoption of precision agriculture to limit the consumption of agricultural supplies of water, utilization of geothermal energy in greenhouse crops, collective investments by producers, groups, and cooperatives to jointly utilize new technology and equipment as well as reduce production costs. Fifth priority is providing support for the diversification of the local economy by creating new business and employment opportunities in rural areas, especially to those that are significantly affected by the transition to a climate-neutral economy. For example, as Mr. Arabowsi mentioned, lignite rural areas of Western Macedonia and megalopolis in Peloponnese. In this regard, LEADER is the main bottom approach for local development programs and are the most appropriate tools for CAP strategy planning to finance green and digital infrastructures and technologies in various sectors, such as training and education, cooperation and networking, public and private investment and services, ensuring the necessary synergies of EU funds beside agriculture. The aim is to attract private investments in all areas of economic activity, such as processing, handicrafts, and agro-tourism, which will help to highlight the local identity of local areas, the cultural and natural heritage of countryside, as well as the promotion and distribution of local products in this way, the utilization, protection, and promotion of natural, environmental, and cultural potential of our rural development is attempted in order to make them attractive, sustainable, and multifunctional, offering employment opportunities and quality of life to their residents and especially to young people. As you can understand, these strategic priorities that I presented are in the center of our planning within the context of our preparation for the implementation for the new Common Agricultural and Fisheries Policy. Closing, I would like to thank you again, Professor Moropoulou, and the organizer for the invitation. I will emphasize that, in my opinion, the most crucial factor that will determine the outcome of our efforts to promote green transition will be social participation and contribution, and will change our way of thinking and to adopt reforms with open mind and good intention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Papagiannidis. Mr. Papagiannidis is a prominent expert with a long-standing experience on common agricultural policy and fisheries. He has presented the full picture of the challenges that the agricultural and the fisheries sector will face because of the climate crisis. Indeed, desertification, water scarcity problems will be there, and desalination of water is a solution. There are new techniques now and technologies that the Technical University of Athens has developed with the program Idrousa, Zero Brine, many new innovative initiatives to tackle the problems that we will be facing. So thank you very much, Mr. Papagiannidis. I would like now to give the floor, and I think this was a good transition for Professor Moropoulou, who is the next speaker.
Thank you very much, dear Mr. Kremlis. It is indeed a challenge to go through history of the demand for sustainable development. It started at 81, when at the UNESCO General Assembly I presented this proposal for sustainable development to take through environmental crisis the world, and more especially isolated areas. Since then, it took almost 40 years in order to actually prioritize in real measures, policies, and strategies what the UN suggested at the agenda of 2030 as a primary goal: sustainable development. It should be linked to the need for the Green and Blue Deal, to the need for initiatives like the one the Greek Prime Minister presented at the UN, and which at national level Giorgos Kremlis is coordinating, initiatives in order to address the climate crisis and suggest policies and measures for resilience of cultural heritage. It should be engaged with the total pandemic crisis and with the severe socioeconomic crisis that it followed 2010, and it brought us up to now, in order to realize what we started 40 years ago. Hence, I would like to present, now that things are mature for real strategies, and now that policies are disponible and they are in the front of realizing issues of that kind, to present this sustainable development strategy in isolated areas, like as in the project Ai, it comes from sustainable in Greek, Aïφόρος, Ανάπτυξη, on which together with some of the people in this panel. And the question is, in order to promote a sustainable plan in an isolated area, what do you have to mobilize? Of course, you have to mobilize economic resources, and in an isolated area, that means external economies, that means tourism. And tourism has to be optimized based upon the exploitation of cultural and natural heritage assets on the one hand, and on the other hand, on preserving them instead of destroying them. That means that as a first principle, we need circular economies. in order to exploit and preserve. And this is a major challenge. Of course, to go on to augment tertiary sector without which you cannot promote local development, you have to strengthen primary sector. That means what Dimitris Papagiannidis suggested and resumed. And this is very important. Otherwise, we don't go on local level since we destroy all the agricultural resources. And of course, in the secondary sector, in order to shield and multiply the advantages developed by the primary and tertiary sector development. That means if you want a realistic scenario, you have to go towards designing a strategy which will first of all document, model, and manage on local level what are these assets arising from cultural and natural heritage. In our case, we are working in this pilot project with Etoloakarnania, the poorest prefecture in Greece, East Mani, the poorest ekistic accomplishment in Peloponnese, but with a brand name. The Evia, we started with the medium area of Evia, but then we extended it after the fires to the northern as well. And of course, the only island on northern Aegean, which is not touristic, but it's very rich in culture, Chios, and the small isolated Dodecanese islands, the neoclassical islands of Chalki, Simi, Castellorizo, and Kassos, which is the rural past of our tradition in Dodecanese. This goes through employing new technologies, but not only digital technologies. We have to discern here that digital technologies are very powerful in order to communicate, but are not the real thing. And the challenge is how to use, to visualize what are, to attract the tourism, the heritage assets, the natural assets, but in a way that you will preserve them in their physical materiality. So that's a great challenge, and that goes with integration into the design of local economy of all the steps of exploiting, developing, and at the same time preserving, which is capable to bring us to a plan of suggested investments. And then the innovation in technology is not enough. We need innovation in finance. And what the president of the Development Bank, the Greek Development Bank, said was very essential from that point of view. We need new tools in order to mobilize investments where market does not exist, and you have to develop the market as well. And we need social innovations as well from the point of view of institutional approaches, new concepts and organizations that do not exist. Because how are you going to exploit through reuse in applying the principles of circular economy, the medieval up village in Chalki, if you don't have the institutional framework to do that, to subsidize actually the restoring of houses and the reuse of houses. This is a question that this consortium, with NTUA as coordinator, with fourth in the environmental actions, with Telesto and Consortis in planning the geoinformatics and the platforms for the digital management, with the Technical Chamber of Greece, of Dodecanese and of Northern East Aegean, and ITEP, the Research Institute for Tourism, are trying to approach. And since it's not time for details, I will pass through the visualization of this design to give you an idea what are the challenges and what we are going to enhance as plans through the policies that Mr. Arabώsi suggested for the Green Deal, which is very important, of course, here. So the region of Aetolakarnania, where we designed coastal and riverside and lakeside routes for cultural tourism, comprised by all the historic periods, ruins, monuments, and sites, from the ancient Agora of Demokratia in Stratos to all most important Byzantine and post-Byzantine monuments and castles there. And that shows that the distribution of these cultural assets associated to the natural beauty of the lakes, the rivers, and the coasts are such and so rich that they might actually articulate a development plan for all the area. The same in the Eastern Mani, where we are seeking to organize an open-air museum of history and traditional architecture comprised by 180 ekistic cores, traditional villages, among which a strategy to revive at least the 20-30 of them is vital, because an old strategy at 47 of the Prime Minister Tzanetakis, even though it was very ambitious and very positive, it failed because it was not sustained by the locals. The local villages were not revived, were restored, but not revived. Hence, we have to go through enhancing local economies and developing new jobs. Otherwise, there is no chance to retain young people and promote a local economy. And of course, the methodology for that is very important, to develop manuals for operation and recording of data, to classify the data in a way that the case of each ekistic core of monument should be consistent in that plan. And from this point of view, developing this methodology in Mani, we have enlarged the plan, and here in Evia, which is now, due to the fires, in crisis of the natural environment, and not only of the social environment as well. The cultural roots have to be associated with the real roots. I mean, to bring you from Chalkis to the northern Evia, which should be enriched as the plan that the Prime Minister has now acknowledged and announced is on, and then to sustain through civil infrastructures the new development plan. The same in Chios, cultural roots, revival of abandoned medieval villages like Anavatos or Avgonima, with establishment of international networks of universities, research entities, and civil organizations in order to study the revival and bring the message to all the world. And the same in the islands of Dodecanese, where mostly of our research will be presented by the mayor and the president. So I would like to say that to create such a plan from agrotourism to preserve intangible cultural heritage, which will bring in the interface of local society, the tourists, and will develop a more sustained tourism to our islands, to promote actions of rejuvenating traditional arts, crafts, techniques, to create new routes not only on the local level, but in the level of Mediterranean. That shows a new development plan which will be integrated only if it will meet energy needs and renewable energy resources. And I have to say that because in Chalki, 40 years ago, with youth initiatives, we started all the other part. We restored the houses. We established the Center for Friendship and Youth, for Friendship and Peace of the Youth of the World, but we didn't go to preserve the natural resources. And it is now what the Secretary General Zdoukou said, the project of renewable resources with local authorities, that it is integrating, shielding, and giving sustainability to this program. So the local development requires infrastructures, transport, social infrastructures in order to improve civil quality of life, information, education, support of entrepreneurship in order to create new jobs and keep up with youth there. That's why it is important that we promote all this research and design of new strategies and plans with local authorities, local people, and we are working with them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Moropoulou, for your pioneering ideas and your vision for the islands in promoting new concepts of circular tourism. I would say circular conditions for the islands to develop, and of course for the people to go back to the islands. I often say that it is a sign of underdevelopment to have in the region of Attica almost half of our population, while we can promote through incentives and better conditions that through your ideas and projects, Professor Moropoulou, you are promoting an environment that will enable young people to go back to the islands, to go back to their regions, and also to combat brain drain. This is the key challenge for our country. The Prime Minister is paying a special attention to this, and I do believe that through the energy transition and climate neutrality and all the new jobs that will be created, including circular shipping, there will be new conditions for our brains to come back to the country, and hopefully also to go and live in our islands. I have noticed that we are 4 islanders on this panel. Mr. Yannikouris, Professor Moropoulou, the mayor of Chalki, and I, we are from the Dodecanese. And we do believe that a lot can be done on the islands. There are almost 10 minutes left, so without ado, I would like to give the floor to the mayor of Chalki, one of the Greek islands where not only energy transition is promoted, but also circular economy concepts. The floor is yours, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kremlis. Thank you very much, Professor Moropoulou, for inviting me to your international conference. I will try to make an introduction to the project that has already been implemented in Halki with my island, English. Recently, in our island was inaugurated the action Halki Green Smart Island, the first Greco island by the Ministry of the Environment with the initiative of Mrs. Alexandra Zdoukou, which includes a photovoltaic park for the production of Greek energy, 1 megawatt, which is in operation that covers the needs of residents and business of Halki. The provision of 6 purely electric cars and recharging structures with the simultaneous integration of smart public lighting systems, as well as sea movements based on electrification with the innovation of fully electric boat, as well as the development of innovative telecommunication service and technologies in 5G networks. The protections of Halki Island, the preservation of its rare environmental imprint, the effort to reduce the environmental impact through sustainable management of natural research with emphasis on policies aimed at environmental protection and sustainable development, addressed to the citizen himself, led us to the creation of the Green Smart Island of Halki, an initiative that will bring new development approaches and economic growth, expansions of the labor market for the permanent residents on our island, further development of the tourism sector, and ultimately improving the quality of life of all of us with practical environmental conscientiousness. Our goal is the energy autonomy of the island of Halki through the production of green energy and a parallel saving in the cost of electricity for households, but also the municipality through the mobilization of residents. The vehicle that will help us achieve the above energy transition is our island. In our island is the energy community of Halki, Halki On. The Halki Energy Community, Halki On, is the first energy community in the Dodecanese, which was founded on May 19, 2021, based in Halki. Today, about 7 months later, the formal procedures have been completed, approval of articles of association, issuance of the gaming number, VAT number, and bank account, so that the energy community exists fully as a legal entity. It currently has 38 members, natural and legal persons, including the municipality of Halki, the Athletic Association, as well as number of local business of small and medium size and residents of our island. Our immediate goal is to move forward and integrate the whole of Halki society into our energy community. The next step is blue energy. Finding efficient, renewable energy sources is one of the most important global ventures of today, and the island of Halki has shown that it listens to the future and adapts to the most innovative way. Huge advances have been made in the exploitation of the sun at the moment. The seas are the next energy target. Of course, it is understandable that the utilization of the liquid element presents greater difficulties than the sun or the wind. However, it's a given that through the movement of water, energy production takes place that can be utilized for production of electricity. A big bet that if we want, will give a deep breath of life to the planet, but also to its inhabitants. Especially countries like Greece, surrounded by water, will have huge benefits in the appropriate method of exploiting blue energy is found. Something that, as everything shows, will not be long in coming. Sustainable development of Halki by creating new touristic research and products, cultural roots, and revealing of the cultural architecture research in Chalki. Chalki is a Greek island in the southeastern Aegean in the Dodecanese archipelago with 470 inhabitants. It is located 5 miles west of Cape Armenistif in Rhodes, southeast of Tylos, and northeast of Carpathian Sea. Chalki has a variety of archaeological and religious sites to visit. The old village, which abandoned as the last inhabitants of the village in around 1970, consists of small monasteries, Αγία Τριάδα, Saint Konstantinos, and Panagia Choriani. The Doric capital in Agios Konstantinos, both thrones carved in the rock with inscriptions Dios and Katis, the Castle of the Knights. The Castle of the Knights is located in the northeastern part of the island at the top of the hill of Saint Nikolaos, built on the foundation of an older, probably Hellenistic wall. It was founded by the Knights of the Order of St. John in the middle of the 14th century until it was handed over to the Ottomans in 1522, after the fall of Rhodes. The Church of St. Nikolaos, the bell tower of St. Nikolaos, was built with the marbles of the ancient temple of Apollon and is the tallest bell tower of the Dodecanese. Inside the church, there is a small ecclesiastical museum. Remarkable religious moments are also the Church of Panagia Choriani, the Monastery of St. Ioannis of Alarga, the Monastery of Taxiarchis Michail Panormitis. The development of Chalki, model of sustainable development, local participation, and international cooperation. Chalki, in 1982, at the initiative of the Ministry of Youth of Greece and under the auspice of UNESCO, with the active participation for local social development agencies and local government, municipality of Chalki, municipality of Rhodes, and prefecture of the Dodecanese, was proclaimed as island of peace and friendship of youth from all over the world. The island, with this declaration in combination with a comprehensive program of sustainable development that was developed and implemented in the period 82-86, was a model of island development with main axes: formulation of international environmental and development policies from local and regional development, youth initiatives to the promotion of sustainable development policies. UNESCO, youth and ecological initiatives, culture and tourism in 1983 proposal. The program of local employment initiatives to boost employment and entrepreneurship, renamed to program Local Economy and Employment Development Program. Decision of the UNESCO Ministry of Youth Promotion of Chalki as an island of peace and friendship as a model of island sustainable development. Recommendation of Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development and the EU for the introduction of sustainable development as a model for employment growth as funding from the Community Fund. The restoration of traditional houses and the Υπουργείο of Chalki as a tourist superstructure and settlement that serve the category social needs prove that protecting cultural heritage can become a level of growth with smart design, low cost, and social participation. A new initiative by the municipality of Chalki, the prefecture of Southeast Aegean, General Secretary of Energy, Mrs. Doukou, Ministry of Energy with Mr. Skrekas, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Kyriakos Mitsotakis, permitted the creation of a photovoltaic power station, solar park in Chalki. The new international appeal and initiative for Chalki, the relieving of the castle of Chalki and the restoration, protection, and regeneration of Pano Chorio, inspired to be a new pilot program for sustainable preservation of the cultural heritage of the municipality of Chalki with the participation of the Mr. Adonis Yannikouris through the UNESCO program with UNESCO, aiming to mobilize the new generation through the organized participation of universities in the mapping of historic buildings, gardens, and settlements, and the formation and discussion of proposals for their living. Through the formation in Pano Chorio of an open forum of international universities and organizations promoting study and dialogue for the protection of the cultural heritage, aiming at the revival of Pano Chorio with the tool of adapting rules of buildings belonging to the municipality in partnership with stakeholders. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Chalki is becoming more and more green. The sky is the limit. And we are all there, and you have referred to all the people helping you in this ambitious plan. We are all there to support you. Now, as the time is flying, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Adonis Yannikouris, who is the president of the Dodecanese Regional branch of the Technical Chamber of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. Kremlis. Mrs. Moropoulou, I would like to thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to present the small island of Dodecanese in the second international conference. Secretary Generals, Mr. Arabousis, Mr. Papagiannidis, dear Dimarchos of Chalki, Mrs. Hadjipetru, this is the first time in history that the Technical Chamber of Greece undertakes a research role in collaboration with the National and Technical University of Athens. This is the beginning of the implementation of policies for sustainable tourism development in less developed regions and isolated areas. In our research, we decided to focus on 4 islands in Dodecanese. For the islands of Chalki, Simi, Castellorizo, and Kassos, that lie within the narrow or wider region of roads, it is possible with the advancement of unique architectural, cultural, and environmental assets to orient the existing tourist flow and either create new touristic activities and add value to the local economy. We strongly believe that this program is crucial for the development of this island, as it will reverse the degradation of the environment and the crisis of human resources, and it will be strengthen the performance and organization of external economies. The small islands of Dodecanese must apply a strategic planning for both cultural and environmental reserve. It can be achieved by several strategic actions, such as the attraction of external economies, the protection of the environment, the promotion of the architectural heritage, the utilization of alternative energy sources, and more. As exemplary intervention, I present you the following. In Yalos in Simi, it is proposed the revealing of the shipbuilding history and tradition of the island, the creation of new activities, and 2 new marine connections. Also in Kalistrata in Simi, the revealing of the island's commercial history and historical and architectural laser projections. In Chalki, the revealing of its castle and the completion of the installation of the commercial port in Kanya and industrial infrastructure, and revealing the ancient Kifes. Another worth mentioning intervention in the cultural sea routes in the complex of Megisti that will restore the recognition of the national space in all the islands of the complex and will increase the area of touristic activities. The recent study regarding the Cordoni of Castellorizo's port will ensure the aesthetic compatibility of the decoration of the settlement with the architecture of the settlement and structural integrity restoration of the quay of the port. For the Mandrake in Castellorizo, its compatible revival and restoration is proposed, while investigating the possibility for the creation of a public marina or tourist shelter, installation of the reservoir in Vuno, and of course the desalination facilities. For the island of Kassos, It proposed to become the next Greco island in Greece. Following the example of the Eco-Halki project, Kassos should become the next green destination and should be transformed into an island of clean energy transition, Greek economy, energy self-sufficiency, and digital innovations, for 100 reasons that I've already discussed with Mrs. Doukou. The development of a trail network to Prionas and a train network between Antiperatos Chadies, and the revealing of Kassos marine archaeology. Finally, it is proposed to analyze and showcase the importance of reliving rural construction and practices in Kassos. But in order for this program to be successful, the mandatory condition is our cooperation with the local authorities and the societies. Ms. Moropoulou, it is an honor for the engineer of the Dekanis to have the opportunity to work for the first time in history on such an interesting project that will help these islands grow. Our small islands finally achieve big goals, and they can set an excellent example to inspire the whole country, orient towards a more sustainable touristic culture. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yannikouris, for sharing with us your milestones as regards the process of further greening the islands of the Dodecanese, which have a very rich cultural and natural heritage. Without ado, we are now moving to the last speaker of our panel, Ms. Maria Konstantoulos, on behalf of the Governor of Northern Aegean, Professor Mouzouris. She will be connected online.
Dear Professor Moropoulou, thank you very, very much for this invitation. Dear Mr. Dr. Kremlis, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. Papagiannidis and Mr. Arabossis, Mrs. Hadjipetrou, Mr. Mayor of Halki and Mr. Yannikouris, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am Mary Konstantoulou, the Chief Executive Officer of the Development Organization of the North Aegean region, and I am joining this panel on behalf of our Governor and the former Rector of the National Technical University of Athens, Professor Konstantinos Mouzouris, who is sending his warmest wishes for the success of this conference. Professor Mouzouris, he was not able, due to other things he had to do today, to join this panel, so I am here instead of him. So first of all, allow me to express my gratitude and congratulate the organizer for hosting this conference under the patronage of the President of the Hellenic Republic, Mrs. Ekaterini Sakellaropoulou. Since its emergence in early 2020, the rapidly spreading COVID-19 pandemic has wreaked global havoc. While numerous communities have been facing lockdowns of varying lengths, the economic consequences of the virus have been devastating. The effects on the global economy worldwide have been particularly harmful, as our normally hypermobile society has grounded to a halt. It is not only the major players in the economic supply chain who have suffered unfathomable damage. In thousands of localities, businesses of all sizes have suspended operations, and many of these will likely never reopen or restart their activity as it was before. The COVID-19 crisis has disrupted global economy in ways that decades of climate change negotiations failed to deliver. The pandemic has exposed systematic failures that have been raised by critics for quite some time, but were ignored due to the short-term economic benefits. Given that the global temperatures are estimated to have increased already by 1.07 degrees Celsius from 1950 to 1900 to 2010 until today, the chances of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius are slim. Despite the emergency, humanity has not managed to fundamentally change the trajectory of the in response, experts system challenges with a low-carbon economy that will require nothing less than a revolution. How to achieve such a systematic change remains unresolved. History has shown that the crisis can bring about technological innovation and development. Pandemics and new diseases have long had a transformational effect on environments and societies. Therefore, the transformational actions and possibilities of modern pandemics are nothing new. They perhaps just seem that way because it is affecting the developed world and generations who have either not been exposed to or otherwise just forgotten given access to the antibiotics and modern medicine, the impacts of pandemic and the essential role of mobility within them. Climate change has become one of the most significant threats to world heritage, potentially impacting their outstanding universal value, including their integrity and authenticity, and their potential for economic and social development at a local level. North Aegean region consists of 10 islands, 5 of them big and 5 of them smaller. Their history is lost in centuries. Limnos is the island of Hephaestus, Icaria is the island of Icarus, Chios the island of Homer, Samos the island of Pythagoras, and Lesbos the island of Sappho. Islands and coastal environments have long been favored for human settlement, providing access to resources, transportation, trade, and feasible locations. Millennia of coastal occupation have produced a wealth of archaeological sites. Coasts are dynamic areas subject to a range of forces and natural processes. Cliff and dune erosion, flooding, and inundation put archaeological sites at immediate danger of destruction. At the coast, climate impacts result from sea level rise, increasing wavelength, and changing weather patterns, all factors that multiply existing stresses. Some effects, such as inundation, collapse, or even the destruction of sites, are immediately visible, while indirect challenges, such as the looting of places, revealed during storms, also threaten important resources. Coasts are therefore among the first and most noticeable places to show the effects of climate change on heritage, in contrast to a number of other climate impacts affecting heritage sites that are subtle and occur over the longer term. Adapting climate change is not just our priority, but our commitment as well. With today's knowledge, how can our policies and plans be geared towards more effective protection of our cultural heritage? We need to promote research and innovation in establishing methods applicable to protect our cultural heritage. EU funds and national funds as well has also been instrumental in carrying out studies on the digitalization, conservation, sustainability, and safeguard cultural heritage, understanding the environmental conservation requirements of sites, so to ensure long-term accessibility and conservation. We believe that the preservation and protection of the environment and our cultural heritage in relation to the threat of climate change should be high on our agenda. It is our duty as policymakers and scientists to protect such public good and to design effective policies to address the issue. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Konstantoglou, for highlighting the challenges of the islands of northern Aegean. Indeed, islands are more vulnerable to climate change, and the message is that we need to make them climate resilient with the view to ensuring the protection of their cultural and natural heritage and the quality of life of their citizens. I speak under the control of Professor Moropoulou. I believe, I'm afraid we don't have time for questions. So I would like to thank the prominent speakers of this panel, to thank the audience for your attention, and to wish a successful continuation of this important conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Giorgos Kremlis. We are starting the next panel, which is under the same general title, Green and Blue Deal for Local and Regional Sustainable Development. And it's organized as an adjoint event of the conference to the Researchers' Night as well, with NTUA and the Ministry of Environment and Energy. And I would like to invite the moderator to undertake the direction of the discussions. The moderator is the Dean of the School of Rural Surveying and Geoinformatics Engineering of NTUA, Professor Babis Ioannidis. Babi, you are undertaking the direction. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. I have the honor to be the moderator of this session. My name is Babis Ioannidis, and I'm Professor of Photogrammetry in the School of Rural Surveying and Geoinformatics Engineering at National Technical University of Athens, and the Dean of the school. Let me also introduce you the rapporteur of this session, Mr. Nikolaos Kampanis, who is Research Director of the Coastal and Marine Research Laboratory, Institute of Applied and Computational Mathematics, Foundation for Research and Technology, alas. Well, I welcome all of you, participants and the invited panelists to this session today. The topic of the session is the Green and Blue Deal for Local and Regional Sustainable Development, and the specific title of our panel discussion is Sustainable Land Management, Rural and Urban Development through Preserving, Reusing, and Revealing Cultural Heritage. And it is directly related to the theme of a large and ambitious research project under the scientific supervision and coordination of Professor Moropoulou. At this point, I was to congratulate the organizer of this event, Professor Moropoulou, who has successfully managed to invite and bring together a large number of international and local experts, academics, and land professionals from various disciplines, as well as stakeholders and decision makers, to share their experience and give us information about their recent activity in the field. Today, we will have the chance to share and blend ideas, experience, and knowledge with 9 experts in this session. We will have less than 10 minutes each for presenting our thoughts and ideas, and after that, at the end of the session, we will have time for questions. Following the discussion, the rapporteur will give a wrap-up of the resolutions and highlights our discussion. The title of the research project that I mentioned earlier is Sustainable Development of Less Developed Regions and Isolated Areas by Creating New Touristic Resources and Products through Analysis, Documentation, and Modeling of Cultural Assets using innovative ICT applications. The acronym of this project is AIE, which is an ancient Greek word meaning forever, as we wanted to connect the objectives of the project with the concept of resilience and sustainability. At this point, I wish to emphasize the important role of land management, land use zoning, and land tool development for boosting the sustainable development of the neglected or isolated rural areas and villages in the remote areas of our country through tourism. We aim to identify all interesting green and blue routes network from all the various historical periods that may attract tourists, such as important archaeological sites and classical antiquity, as well as Byzantine constructions, castles and churches, and the more recent samples of our local architecture, also historic settlements, areas of particular cultural and natural beauty of the Hellenic territory, both in the mainland and on the islands, the coastal zone and even offshore, aiming also to integrate coastal and maritime tourism. A number of pilot projects scattered all over Greece, regions of Aetolia, Karnania, the municipality of East Mani in Peloponnese, the region of Middle and North Evia, where we had huge fires during summer and loss of tens of thousands of hectares of forests. Also the small islands of the Dodecanese, Chalki, Simi, Castellorizo, and Kassos. All these areas will serve as a guide for further and more systematic development. Important and central role in this effort is the compilation of a fit-for-purpose geospatial data infrastructure, which will provide the necessary updated and reliable geospatial information for the necessary interventions and land reforms. Greek land surveyors are in the front line of such activities. As the Dean of the School of Rural Surveying and Geoinformatics Engineering, I'm happy with the fact that our educational courses provide a broad spectrum of skills, both in the field of measurement, data collection, visualization, and management, as well as in the fields of land management, land policy, and land use planning, land valuation, and land development. But the most powerful element of this particular project is the interdisciplinary structure of the research team. The involved experts will analyze all the collected geospatial and demographic information in relation to the information about tourism, such as tourist resorts, existing tourist arrival flow, and will use modern technologies to develop digital tools landscape, develop new touristic resources and products, and will boost the local economy. The four axes on which the subjects of the project will be developed are analysis, documentation, modeling, and management of the cultural and the environmental asset, which is the first axis, utilization of innovative ICT applications, the second one, design and creation of new products for touristic local development, the third one, and the fourth, circular economy and social cohesion. Now, it's time to give the floor to our panelists. The first one is Professor Bakoyannis, Efthimios Bakoyannis, Secretary General of Spatial Planning and Urban Development of the Ministry of Environment and Energy of the Hellenic Republic, and also his assistant professor at our school at the National Technical University of Athens. Unfortunately, Professor, and I will try to read his speech because I think it's very interesting.
Professor,
well,
we will show,
begin reading
the PowerPoint
Dr.
while you are
Bakoyannis'
reading.
speech.
We will show the PowerPoint of Thimios while you are reading, so you may proceed.
Okay. The growing phenomena of uncontrolled urbanization require new methods of urban planning based on current needs. Agenda 2030, with its 17 SDGs for sustainable development, sets the following concern in Objective 11. Cities must operate inclusively, be safe, resilient, and sustainable. In addition, areas closely related to urban development, such as infrastructure, health services, networks, etc., presuppose a holistic approach to the issue. It is a fact that metropolitan areas are among the main causes of climate change due to excessive land use, rapid depletion of natural resources, and the accumulation of polluting activities. Also, the current pandemic has proven to be an additional reason to reconsider the current model of population concentration in dense urban environments. The quality of spatial planning can significantly accelerate the transition to a sustainable society by developing smart solutions and promoting a sustainable lifestyle, reducing the use of natural resources and energy. Sustainable development requires smart and innovative planning governance, sustainable construction, energy efficiency, prudent space management, and the promotion of high-quality construction and restoration should be the main options for the development of urban, suburban, and rural areas. The preservation of cultural heritage also plays an important role in the sustainable development. The villages and small settlements consist mainly of houses or small-scale complexes with architecture that always takes into account the environmental peculiarities such as wind, temperature, availability of water, sun, with local materials which are most resident to the challenge of climate change. After all, nowadays sustainable development is opposed to demolition, but is in favor to the reuse of existing buildings and the recycling of demolition products. But sustainable development means first and foremost the preservation of the spatial characteristics of each region, flora, water, element, geomorphology, architectural, industrial, agricultural, commercial, and social resources, gastronomy, etc. The strengthening of spatial elements and natural resources, cultural, environmental, historical, etc. The long-term development strategy that includes agriculture, handcrafts, advanced technology, and any activity related to local culture and tradition. The protection of the environment, the strengthening of our tangible cultural heritage, the creation of infrastructure, the development of 5G and Internet of Things networks are currently not an easy task, because it is a matter of reviewing the development models adapted so far. Moreover, living, working, and leisure spaces must be developed and structured to allow social and economic cohesion, to contribute to social diversity and inclusion for all, by offering a variety of opportunities and gender equality, taking also into account the needs of children and youth. Architecture must also secure rights to basic living needs, for example, safety, access to health education, etc. Improve connections between people, allowing different forms of coexistence in different forms of families, social groups, ages, and people of different backgrounds and physical needs. At that moment, the European Commission is also changing its strategic guidelines and priorities with a greater emphasis on protecting the environment, enhancing cultural heritage, and balanced management of natural resources, which is the Green Deal. Is taking an active role in enacting measures to ensure quality in the construction and safeguarding of public investment in terms of economic viability and sustainable development. The adoption of this policy is working in all directions in order to connect and coordinate all stakeholders with a decisive influence. This is because the objectives of urban planning policy affect other relevant sectoral policies and legislation, such as economy, growth, reducing unemployment, health, and so on. The quality of the building environment should ensure the quality of life while maintaining social cohesion, prosperity, and resilience, enhance living and mixed neighborhoods, protect the environment, and lead to positive economic results. Cultural heritage and contemporary works should be a simple entity in which cultural heritage will be protected and preserved, and newer buildings, infrastructure, and public space will be harmoniously integrated into the overall building environment without excluding transformation and the integration of new technologies. Research in architecture and the promotion of innovation must include active interdisciplinary projects, such as the efficient use of resources, the energy efficiency of buildings, socially sustainable communities, sustainable mobility, the restoration of cultural heritage, and all other areas related to sustainable culture of the built environment. In order to evolve Greek construction into a high-tech sector that will be able to compete equally the European and global markets, high standards of high-quality living, creativity, and innovation must be fully integrated into research and development. Digitization also affects materials and construction techniques, thus having a direct impact on the design and the implementation of buildings. Digital applications such as BIM, Building Information Modeling, and crafting, building printing technologies, determine the design process and therefore the layout and appearance of future construction. Smart buildings with high interconnecting technologies can lead to the development of new building typologies as well as new forms of cities, the digital twins. Reducing carbon dioxide emissions and therefore dependence on fossil fuels plays a crucial role in combating climate change. The shift to renewable energy implies fundamental changes in urban centers, settlements, and urban landscapes. Integrated systems that enable the management of zero-emission buildings offer new design opportunities for new and existing buildings. Energy-saving measures and programs, however, can prove to be a challenge for cultural heritage, and the design quality of new constructions can be degraded if necessary, energy-related construction aspects do not take into account existing cultural values. Architectural quality can be assessed by the establishment of objective criteria, as it is evident in European directives and initiatives such as the Davos Declaration of 2018, which is established of the 8 criteria of building culture and the results of the OMC open method of coordination for the high quality architecture and structured environment, which was completed in mid-October. The General Secretariat for Spatial Planning and Urban Environment, the Ministry of for the protection and management of the building stock and the tangible cultural heritage of Greece. Through the programs Preserve, Renovate, and Διαβιώ, which have been proposed, it is possible to restore and renovate existing buildings as well as improve accessibility to them. These programs aim at the protection and upgrading of historic properties and will provide a solution not only to issues of public safety, but will stimulate the economic and touristic value of historic centers. Also, the General Secretariat is preparing a legal framework concerning intervention procedures for their restoration and reuse of the abandoned and vacant properties. This framework will enable the activation of the private sector and the undertaking of interventions, especially on those buildings with multi-property status, under legal security conditions and with fast procedures. Regarding the digital policy of the General Secretariat on constructions in general, but also in the context of the protection of listed buildings, monuments, and traditional settlements, is planned the creation of the single digital map and the electronic building identity, the digitization of ministry files, the activation of digital land bank, and the transfer of the building rights factor. The transfer of building rights factor is made possible through an integrated program of urban reforms, which is going to provide solutions and chronic problems of urban planning. The lack of designated land uses in most parts of the country, around 80% of the country, has so far led to multiple environmental problems and arbitrary construction with side effects, such as unfair competition from illegally located activities, increase of climate change, inability to determine the zones of transfer of building rights factor, and so on. At the same time, General Secretariat for Spatial Planning and Urban Environment, together with the other ministries, is working on the national strategy for the digitization of the built environment, for the national strategy for the digitization of constructions through the digital tool of BIM. Also promotes the electric vehicle charging plans for electromobility in Greece. Finally, the General Secretariat is in collaboration with EU mission aboard 100 climate neutral cities by 2030 by and for the citizens, prepares from April 2020 the Greek participations for the big project of their transformation into climate neutral cities by 2030. Every crisis, such as that of the COVID-19 pandemic and climate change, in addition to problems and responsibilities, brings also opportunities for changes in developed models that are no longer functional. The General Secretariat for Spatial Planning and Urban Environment, having as an ally the accumulated knowledge of the last years, as I indicated the will and the vision to proceed to radical changes for the future. It demands hard work and initiatives, but also the fruitful contribution and dialogue from all of you in our effort. This was the speech of Professor Bakoyannis. I want to thank him for his contribution to this session. And now I want to proceed, and I will give the floor to the first of our panelists, to Professor Chrysippotsiou. She is Professor for Cadastre and Land Administration in our school at the National Technical University of Athens. She is here next to me, and I give her the floor now.
Thank you, and good morning to all. In fact, the most important thing at the moment, practical thing, is that I'm the wife of Professor Ioannidis, and we share the house, we share the laptop, we must share the screen, so please forgive me for the delay. Before I start, I wish to warmly congratulate our professor, Mrs. Moropoulou, and not just to congratulate, but to express my admiration with this amazing professor that adds value to our university with so multiple skills, and that she has managed to bring together all these experts, and always does something really admirable when she is involved in organizing conferences, but also in helping the society and promoting our expertise. So thank you very much, Professor Moropoulou. Let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm a surveying engineer, and I have long and broad international activity as a land professional and land surveyor. I consider myself a land surveyor dealing with land administration and land management issues and land policy, and of course with geospatial information. So I will try here briefly to show you the relevance with the topic that we are dealing with, revealing and protecting cultural and natural assets, and actually managing integrated sustainable development for isolated areas. So my presentation will be how geospatial information, land administration, and land consolidation tools may help and ensure successful integrated sustainable development of isolated areas. The outline of my statement includes a brief discussion about the fact that implementing projects for integrated sustainable development requires a land reform and what that really means. Then we will talk a little bit about land management, the land management paradigm of land surveyors, and the value of having an inclusive land administration system in place. Then we will talk about the value of having a seamless geospatial data infrastructure in place as a tool, and then a little bit about the land consolidation tool that is broadly used in Europe, and the value of community engagement. And then we will close with some anticipated challenges when implementing land reform projects, and what we say that we have to keep in mind. So, as I said, the land reform may have a significant impact on existing formal and informal rights. Implementing projects like that for integrated sustainable development of isolated areas requires a land reform. And this land reform may have an impact on existing rights. And I'm talking about formal but also informal rights. This is really very important that we have to take into account. And when we have such projects, we understand that we have conflicting interests and tight time schedules that we need to follow. So we need to make interventions on land. And in many countries, the land expropriation tool is used, but this is not the best practice at the moment, because we need to avoid to create landless people, and this is really important. And for just to mention that In many developed European countries, only 1% of the cases for land taking goes through land expropriation because of this issue. And usually we implement tools that we can do some kind of land exchange or voluntary sales or land consolidation tools. And I will give you some information later. So when we do these land reforms, we really have to care about the vulnerable groups and the all affected groups. Inclusivity is very important. Transparency in our actions is very important. Sharing information is important. And of course, when we need to take the land, fair compensation is also important, and timely compensation is important. Let me show you a little bit the land management paradigm we're as land surveyors following. Here we say, let me use the laser pointer. Okay. Here we say that within a country's context of institutional arrangements, we need to have a land administration system in place. These functions include land tenure security, land ownership and land tenure in general, some system that will provide information about land value and about the land use types and land use regulations, and also information about the land development procedures and regulations. And in order to have such a system in place, we need a lot of land information, updated information, and we need land information infrastructures. It is better to have integrated these functions. So modern land administration systems include altogether cadastre and land valuation and also regulations about land use. Or at least we have integrated databases. And how we structure these functions, it is really important, and it is not the same in all countries. But fortunately, within the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda 2030, there are some co-signed agreements, and all countries try to work towards harmonization of policies. So within this land policy framework of each country, that includes also green and blue policies and social issues and environmental and social issues and economic issues. Then we finally end up with having sustainable development in place. So when we have isolated areas, that's a typical picture of somewhere, a village in the Balkans, in Europe. So we need to take into consideration, as I said, that we need to have inclusivity in place. It is really important to have a clear, inclusive, affordable, and transparent land administration system. We need to have information about tenure and ownership rights, and this means that it has to be nationwide. It has national coverage, because usually we don't have full coverage in the countries all over the world. Only 30% of the world has a cadastre in place. The rest, 70% of the world is not yet registered. So therefore, it is important to go for formalization of informal settlements, and many countries now have formalization projects, and much of my time is giving advice on this field, and that's what we talk about, inclusivity, to include formal and informal rights. This is really important for implementing land reforms. Then having such a system in place minimizes lending risks and enables funding for further improvements, either of life or business or the economy, the local economy in general, and also builds trust among the society, which is really, really important to do any kind of land reform, and provides information about, as I said, the basic registers, the ownership, the value, the use of the land. And we can enable planning interventions, and it provides information also for doing land consolidation and land readjustment projects. Now, some of the good practice for a successful land reform is that some lessons to take home messages is that existing land tenure rights, as well as the value of such rights, should be recognized prior to any land reforms. It's not just the rights that should be formalized, but also the value of such rights should be taken into account prior to any land reform. As I say to our students, you enter, you participate into a land reform with your property, with your value, and you get out with your value or even higher. That's the concept. That's something that can ensure the success of this land reform. So residents will be fairly treated and are more likely to support the reforms that way. Then having such a system in place, it can support the compilation of a strategy document and the communication plan, to have the base map and to visualize the situation, and to develop a cost-benefit analysis and raise awareness among the society. It enables the revision of land use zoning, if necessary, and the redistribution of rights, a fair redistribution of rights. It enables also the creation of a land bank, which is really important to see what is the state land available for land exchange and for privatization of land when needed, and enables the structure of a seamless geospatial database for the visualization of information, where you can see information about the land, the coastal zone, the sea, the surface, the water, the sea urchin, and the underground also, and the air. So that's what we call integrated information. Well, originally we had the 2D-dimension information in such systems. Now we proceed with 3D dimension of such systems, and also in the coastal zone and the marine environment. And you can see here that all activity is integrated, and the information related to that is integrated and can be visualized. And now we are talking also, as the previous speaker said, the ministry, Professor Bakoyannis, for sustainable cities and the digital twin of the cities, which is really important. So a little bit of information about the land consolidation tool. Land consolidation is an advanced tool that allows agricultural land holdings to be rearranged in shape, size, and structure, with a view to improving the production and working conditions in rural and forest areas, but as well as to promote the general use and development of land. And this is important, and there we can do any kind of interventions for protection and preservation of cultural heritage and tourism, policies, improving tourism policies also, and in general have sustainable isolated areas. It is broadly used in the European Union, not in the United States, as we know. It can be combined with other measures for improving land fragmentation, for applying new policies for climate change, for example, for improving living conditions in these remote areas, doing public works, airports, road network, etc. So instead of doing land expropriation, we introduce a land consolidation project into the greater area. We rearrange the shape and size of land parcels, and that way we create the necessary lands to do all these works that we need to do. Or it can be applied for protecting the environment, for managing disasters, natural or man-made disasters, protect the natural and cultural assets, for village redevelopment, etc. You can see here various examples for forestry, also for fishing areas as well. So you can understand that it can be applied also in the coastal zone and the marine environment. And now we can talk a little bit about the involvement of local communities and local action. And it is important to understand that community engagement is both a process and an outcome. In the process, we need to enable procedures where the community has the opportunity to provide input to a plan, not just to be informed, but to provide their input there. And the level of participation of the community varies. And the second part is to achieve a change in the community's behavior. This is really important. For example, to change the behavior of the state, or to change or change the behavior of the people, so that they will understand the value of cultural and natural heritage, and they will protect it, but at the same time, they will be able to use it in a safe manner. So the specific social, cultural, physical, and economic conditions in isolated areas are important factors, and can ensure the resilience of the community. And we can understand that community engagement may refer to a range of various structures, such as coalitions, partnerships, collaborations, etc. It can be a complex and labor-intensive issue, and requires time and funding, and we have to be aware of that. And also certain skill sets that leaders may have not previously developed. To create a secure environment for all requires active involvement of the community, residents in isolated areas, community leaders, professionals, the private sector, and all kinds of organizations need to work together in long-term partnerships to share common ideas, and interests about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, with an end goal of making the neighborhood a better place to live. And why does community engagement matter? It's because it increases the likelihood that projects or solutions will be widely accepted. We have more practical and effective solutions because we exchange diverse experience. Citizens develop communication and decision-making skills, which is really important. It enables inclusivity. We can create local networks. Ongoing discussions allow people to express concerns, and therefore we may prevent problems that may appear. You can see here some of the problems in the pictures that we have to take into consideration the local interests. It increases trust, reduces conflict, increases awareness and understanding of the community values and priorities and perceptions of benefits and risks and different ideas. For example, when we heavily regulate in order to protect cultural heritage, we may end up to disasters. And I don't want to mention, but we all have experienced such disasters when people cannot make any interventions in their homes, and therefore, with when a natural disaster comes, then we have big losses, economic and human losses. And also, when we don't create incentives, again, we have disasters. So some of my final slide refers to some of the common challenges that we face in implementing integrated sustainable development in isolated areas. We need to avoid overlapping responsibilities. We need to develop a strategy and to have a timetable and to prioritize. This is very crucial. We need to take into consideration that legislative revisions may be needed. We need to improve capacity issues to identify the local experts and involve the local experts. This is always a challenge. To streamline funding, this is always a challenge to ensure sustainability in financing. to show the benefits fast for the economy and for the citizen. This is very important. And to do best use of the technology, to adopt fit-for-purpose solutions for data collection, monitoring, and sharing of information of services and goods, to involve the private sector to ensure public-private partnerships for certain functions, for example, digitalization of services and automation, and to engage the society, as I said, to have inclusivity, to ensure inclusivity, and last but not least, very important, to develop disaster risk reduction plans when and where these plans are needed. And to close my statement, I want to remind again that we have to make it simple, always, to avoid complexity, and to remember what Albert Einstein had said: learn from yesterday, live for today, and hope for tomorrow. The important thing is not to stop questioning. So thank you very much for giving me the chance to show you the relevance of a land surveyor to this task. And I'm willing to participate in any kind of discussion if we have time for that.
Okay, thank you very much. See, have to stop sharing. Just a moment. And we have to proceed to the next speaker. Next speaker is Professor Konstantinos Moraitis, Professor Emeritus of the School of Architecture at the National Technical University of Athens. Professor Moraitis, the floor is yours.
Dear moderator,
I don't know if
yes, thank you so
Professor
much.
Moraitis is here. Or...
Yeah. Well, I would like to thank you, and I also would like to thank Mrs. Moropoulou for this chance. Mrs. Moropoulou, it's always a great privilege to participate in your conference. Well, unfortunately, I didn't know that I could use slides for my presentation, but fortunately, the images I could use are deep in you. Images already known for the majority of the Greeks and probably for a big number of Europeans and Westerners. Are the images from Arcadia, landscape of Arcadia, a landscape of political freedom and body freedom at the same time. Images from Lesbos, where Sappho loved and sang, the verses are not mine, are Lord Byron's verses. Images from Salamina, where we finally gained the political freedom of Europe and the Western world. There are the images from Parthenon, there are the images from Sunion Temple, all those images which are deep in you. And well, I shall also use a phrase by Mrs. Pochu, community engagement, she said, facilitates, increases the feeling of cultural and social conscience, something like this. Well, we usually refer to landscape resilience or to landscape sustainability, limiting the use of the corresponding terms to a natural-oriented condition. I shall try to use a more complicated, culturally inspired proposal. I shall insist on the fact that the landscape formation in the contemporary historic period is principally a matter of cultural, and let us hold on the second decisive description, a matter of political identity, It was in their proposal of the term geophilosophy, la géophilosophie, that Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari, two French intellectuals, described human conception, the social, epistemic, and theoretical apprehension, as emerging out of the Earth's substratum. And it's strange that they did not refer to the landscape of France, but to the landscape of Greece. Why? Why landscape of Greece and the monumentality of Greece are so important? For aesthetic reasons solely, or for the deep political reason that this landscape and that those monuments are the emblematic formation concerning the creation of the modern and the democratic regimes. This is the principal reason that our landscape, that our monuments are so important, not solely aesthetic reasons. Well, I shall continue. Well, according to Deleuze and Guattari, our epistemic and theoretical apprehensions is emerging out of the earth substratum, out of earth, ea in ancient Greek. Thus, the human, social, cultural, and political conception of reality is deteriorized. Elle est la conception humaine déterritorialisée, according to the French terminology of the two previous intellectuals. It thus creates the social conception of reality, cultural and political formation of reference. The earth is our mother, our political and cultural mother. That's why we have to preserve it. Not for economic reasons of place branding, of the touristic reasons principally, but because of reasons of political conscience. Well, they're coming up, and then they go back to the earth in order to reform it, to reconstruct it, to rebuild it in a newly born, culturally, and I shall repeat the term, politically approved way. I believe that in a conference of such a thematic context as the TMM, insisting on the preservation of cultural heritage, it's rather easy to promote the description cultural landscape. Paysage culturel, πολιτισμικό τοπίο. Landscape, even if we insist on the primacy of natural elements, it's always associated to the history of the societies, of the cultural communities, to their mnemonic references, to the monumentality of their previous historic conceptions, and even to the monumentality of natural landscape substratum in itself. Nevertheless, history and archaeology are not objective, politically neutral domains of our cultural production. Probably Mrs. Moropoulou, who is clearly associated with Rhodos, the Decanese, knows that during the Italian occupation of the Decanese, Italians have tried to Italianize this part of Greece and to present the archaeological perceptions of them and the historical perceptions of them in correlation to a possible colonization for centuries, not for 12 years or 20 years, of this part of Greece. Well, history and archaeology are not objective, politically neutral domains of our cultural production. They reorganize given preformed information in formation, and afterwards they continue and reform it. They reform it. They create ontologies, let's use a term of cybernetics, of semantic metastructural systems that may produce or control knowledge. It is in this context of the possible control that we may speak of the political control of knowledge, of the political control of the archaeology of knowledge, de l'archéologie des savoirs, par Michel Foucault. When we speak about land management, I shall use instead the term landscape management for rural and urban development through preservation, reuse, and revealing of the cultural heritage. We may, of course, think about place branding strategies and the associated to them economic increase of wealth. I prefer to speak about cultural and political development, of qualitative development, and to differentiate it from the economic increase, from the quantitative increase. In the first case, we have economic amelioration solely, an important result for sure. In the second case, we may try to produce social and political historic conscience, a rather difficult goal to be achieved. It is in this context that we have spoken about cultural and political sustainability. Let us continue. The correlation of this conference with informatics may help us to understand that this orientation of contemporary applied science is not restricted to technological approach solely. Well, may I explain it? Not to a mechanical technology knowledge. Fortunately, the Greek word technology techni, logos, refer to the conceptual formation. There is no technology outside modification of our conceptual realms and to our political realms. And informatics is a key instrument in order to understand this. When we use informatics, we are trying to reorganize information, to create new ontologies, metastructural and structural systems, to reorganize our feeling of history, our feeling of social organization. If we try to put information in a virtual guidance system about, let's say, an archaeological site, as for example in ancient Messini, we have to create ontologies to find the way that those informations may be reconstructed and create narratives, guidance narratives. So, let's continue and finish. It may help us, the correlation to informatics, to reach not the neutral evaluation of natural and cultural landscapes solely, but moreover, to emphasize the need to creative, restructured narratives about the cultural and political identity of places, and in accordance to it, about the cultural and political identity of the existing communities. Restructured narratives about Arcadias and Elysian fields that may activate people's critical response. Land, motherland, is not similar to a shoes of Adidas. We cannot use plate branding solely in order to augment touristic development. And you know, of course, that the city of Europe with the most important plate branding expertise, Barcelona, after some years, demanded its independence. We cannot augment the feeling of place identity without augmenting at the same time the feeling of political conscience. And we have to insist on it. So, could we thus recapture the world in crisis through culture? I hope that we will. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Moraitis, for your very interesting speech and for expressing your ideas and your knowledge. And thank you very much. Now I'll give the floor to Mrs. Betty Haralabopoulou. She is president of Geosystem Hellas company, and she is member of the research team of the AI project. Ms. Haralabopoulou.
Thank you, Professor Ioannidis. I'm very honored to be here as a member of Geosystems Hellas, which is a Greek SME based in Athens since 2009. And I would firstly like to express my sincerely thank also to Professor Moropoulou for the great organization and her effort. As Geosystems Hellas, we are participating on the AI project that the previous session and this session is referring to. So in this session, I would like to say a few things about the use of new technologies during the AI implementation in order to achieve inclusion of green and blue initiative and to going through the cultural heritage and natural heritage of specific islands and mainland areas that the AI project have included as case study areas. Just a few words for the company. Geosystems Hellas is the newest Geosystems NU group. We do have a dynamic participation in the downstream space sector, and we do have a great expertise on Earth observation. During the last period, we have been exploring commercial and R&D opportunities, including national, as is the AI project, also European, under the ESA and the Horizon and Interreg framework. The company is member of the European Association of Remote Sensing Companies, and also being one of the first funded members of the Greek Space Cluster. And the company is also participating in the Greek Disaster Resilience Cluster and in other non-profit organizations as entity. Main pillars and priorities is the European Green Deal, the mitigation to the climate change effects, the biodiversity strategy until the 2030, the digital transformation, data and products available to the public, space-derived results open to everyone, also technology achievements and processing capability, like blockchains and cybersecurity, tangible big EO data processes, and the new space initiatives that Greece have entered the last 2 years, like the INCUBE program, which is an Earth observation software solutions program, very similar vision to the AI program, and now the last period of 2001, the Greek initiative of the nanosatellites, which is the new launched space program or national program that can also facilitate developments parallel to other programs like the AI program. The nanosatellites program is a unique program for observing main categories of interest of the Greek nation. It's not only telecommunications and geolocation, navigation, it's also Earth observation. And all this effort can give grateful results to land development and also to development to initiatives of green, blue and sustainable tourism in parallel to the cultural heritage preservation in the country. This is part of the new space technology and the urban environment on resilience, urban adaptation, and sustainable urban development. What we would like to use from space is to monitor, to plan, to preserve, and to help the citizens in having best health and well-being, also being available by routine to visit and to get advantage of the Greek cultural heritage and environmental assets that our country has. This is part of the AI vision, and which is a program funded under a national fund under ESPA 2014-2020, which what we would like to do is to introduce new touristic models and products, and by introducing them, one of the plans is to use space and ICT technologies to facilitate the effort also with experts, experts on landscape, experts on land management, experts on geographical information systems, and experts on cultural and natural heritage. The vision started by Professor Moropoulou some years ago by introducing us this vision as an example in the area of Patras municipality, which was a strategic planning and development of cultural and natural management, and also by making routes inside the city to facilitate tourism and also to facilitate the vision of green and blue and cultural in one step. In United States, blue and green corridors in urban landscapes are facilitating many needs of the citizens. But as far as we all know, the land parcels of our country are much smaller, and also the cadastral entities are much smaller than in the ones that we can see in other countries, and the example of the United States cannot be the best to identify what we can have in our country by blue-green growth and blue-green corridors. But what we can see in the AI project is that the small islands in the Dodecanese, like the Halki Island, have tools and have the vision to use those tools. This is an example that the Greek Orthodox Kalki School has made in several years ago, before Archbishop Elfidoforos became the Archbishop of America, in collaboration with Professor Georgi, has made inside the school small corridors by designing corridors for visitors, and also by using the green rich environment of these small islands. Means that these corridors in our country and in those small islands can realized, but in a different way. Also, circular economy can be realized by recycling the water and having possible water to feed those green infrastructures. And like that, we can have the blue-green growth and also visitors happy, since all those cultural and natural strengths of our environment can be improved. Also, this is an example of Castellorizo, where the monuments can be connected with a similar kind of roads. Means that there is a cultural heritage, but we can make small interventions, clever interventions for blue-green growth, in order this cultural heritage to be more attractive and more reachable for the tourists. The green to our environment can give a kind of well-being, because on summer period is giving shade, and this shade can make the will of the citizens, also the will of the tourists, to visit more those areas, and also like that the Greek cultural heritage can be better visible to all communities. Last but not least, personally, I was very much touched because in the AI project, Professor Moropoulou proposed to include North Evia as last area to be studied. And yesterday we have seen that a new project from the Greek government will start. This would be a road project, a new road project from Chalkis, which is the main city of Evia, going north to 56 kilometers in order to act as a renovator on the vision of reconstruct all these abandoned areas after the big fire of summer 2021, since the area of North Evia used to be, like the slide that I have included, a happy area to travelers, have made in the past happy travelers, and in this period it's very, very important to see it back. On top of the AI project, I'm going to focus on the vision after, because as Professor Ioannidis mentioned, AI for the Greeks means forever. The vision after, during and after, can include the vision of the European Bauhaus, which is crossroads between art, culture, social inclusion, science and technology. This is a vision that brings the Green Deal to our living places and gives to the Europeans a future sustainable, inclusive and beautiful for our minds and our souls. Beautiful means sustainable solutions and create dialogue between our built environment and the planet ecosystem. This is part of AI, but this is part of our future too. In this dimension, we can be inspired by creativity, art and culture. This is the Bauhaus, which is an initiative that in Europe has started in 2020-2021 during the COVID era, which is a very, very pressed period for all the Europeans. And I have included Ursula von der Leyen note, because this is not just an environmental or economic project. It needs to be a new cultural project for Europe, and this can be part of the AI vision. Sorry, I have pressed more than, okay. And last but not least, beautiful, sustainable and inclusive forms of living, part of the Blue Deal for sustainable development in the Mediterranean economy, since Greece is part of the Mediterranean economy. These are, among others, the EU missions that for the years to come up to the 2027, the European Green Deal, the Europe to fit to the digital, for the digital age, and the new Bauhaus. This includes the climate adaptation strategy and long-term vision for the European rural areas. Also boost the societal uptake, and the transformation of Europe will be greener, healthier, more inclusive and resilient. This can be part of the AI project, but this can be the vision for the AI even after the AI project finalization. What we can say more than that is that the World Bank is trying to push with tools and resources for nature-based tourism, which can be attractive and also can be a tool to include cultural heritage and natural heritage under the same umbrella. That's all from my side, and thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Haralabopoulou. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and so I have to proceed quickly to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Professor Cristina Bognotti. She's professor at the Department of Architecture, Built Environment and Construction Engineering at the Polytechnic of Milano. Professor Bognotti, the floor is yours, but please try to keep the time at no more than 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, clearly.
Thank you. So first off, I would like to thank you for letting me take part to this panel. And I would like to share with you a few slides that summarize the research that I have been conducting at Politecnico di Milano together with my supervisor, Professor Stefano Della Torre. This picture stems from the final report of the European project Cultural Heritage Counts for Europe, and as highlighted by the UNESCO in its Hangzhou Declaration, the role of culture has been recognized as the fourth pillar of sustainable development, with heritage serving as a catalyst in the pursuit of urban environmental sustainability. In this approach, all the four pillars of sustainability are jointly adopted in a holistic approach, which finally acknowledges the cultural, economic, environmental, and social domains as being mutually relevant. And this very approach has been adopted within Attivare, to which activate areas, a program co-funded and developed since 2016 by the Italian banking foundation Fondazione Cariplo in conjunction with numerous public and private partners. Activate Areas is a cross-sectoral program custom-tailored for the marginal areas of the region of Lombardy, the location of which is far from major cities and essential providers of healthcare, education, and public transit services. Its goal was to regenerate these small towns and decrease their isolation. The foundation granted 10 million euros, and the main objectives of the program including increasing attractiveness of the inland areas, fostering sustainable local development, enhancing local resources, and fostering participatory processes. One of the two selected projects within this program went by the name of Resilient Valleys. It was developed in the valleys of the province of Brescia, and the partnership involved the Comunità Montana di Valle Trompia, a mountainous area community, one more mountainous area community, the Chamber of Commerce, the University of Brescia, and many NGOs. A number of additional partners, such as municipalities, museums, and schools, also supported this project, and the actions were aimed at boosting and innovating local economies and junior entrepreneurship, which entailed, for example, the establishment of broadband connections, a digital business registration system, and digital front office. Even a home delivery platform offering local food and non-food, as well as pharmaceutical products, was created. And this home delivery platform proved especially useful during the worst month of the pandemic. Some of the actions were aimed at enhancing cultural heritage and identity, which led to the definition of guidelines for the knowledge and conservation of local, rural, and industrial heritage. And besides, a rural building was conserved and transformed into what's known today as the Rebecco Farm, which is a center for the promotion of local rural culture that is currently managed by a network of local farming businesses. And some of the actions were aimed at also hydrogeological risk management. The activities also encompassed the promotion of education, training, as well as scientific and technological innovation, besides the promotion of social inclusion and job placement. For the sake of example, an abandoned fish farm, a hostel and a bar were refurbished and are currently being managed with the help of people with disabilities. Then the improvement of communication and promotion as to local resources and potential of intangible heritage, and some adequate legislative advocacy. Many additional activities were developed during the project, but substantially, what we ought to mention is that the interplay between public and private partners begot economic growth and the development of unprecedented skills. To an ever greater extent, partnerships have been recognized as a viable means of facing the lack of funding typically affecting the cultural heritage field, both in the legal framework and in the literature. Indeed, partnerships may foster reuse of historical buildings for the sake of serving local communities and thereby increase social awareness and participation. Besides, partnerships may also beget further long-term conservation and enhancement activities during the management stage after restoration works have been accomplished. Within the Italian context, funding has traditionally been aimed at interventions on mere individual buildings. Within that context, the foundation has proven capable of developing programs that are truly multi-sectoral and may serve as roadmaps for future initiatives. On your left, we can see the list of the different actions developed within the Resilient Valleys project. It is consistent with the upstream approach as outlined in the final report of the European project Cultural Heritage Counts for Europe. It entails the convergence of resources from different sectors into cultural heritage by means of negotiation dialogues. So the main aim is to gather local resources and skills, allowing culture to become a booster of local development. Finally, the lesson learned may be suitable for adoption in the development of future projects in that they call for greater care for the historic artistic heritage. Thanks to this initiative, not only excellent artifacts, but also minor heritage recognized as such by local communities underwent made accessible to citizens. The intervention should range from conservation all the way to everyday management. And besides, we hope to consider that the reuse of existing buildings allows for curbing further land use. Another aspect is the enhancement of cultural and environmental resources as a leverage for the professional growth and employment of local residents. Then some closer interaction between the cultural heritage and other value-added sectors, the establishment of a well-functioning interplay between public and private funding, the encouragement of private stakeholders' awareness and participation with the special reference to the latter's cultural closeness to the territory involved, in other words, the fostering of participatory processes and the enhancement of third sector-related skills and outcomes. Then the recognition of how critical the planning stage is, thus taking into account management and cost-benefit related issues from the very beginning of operation, and finally, a long-term vision to permeate every action. So, thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Bognotti, for your contribution and for this very interesting and informative presentation. So we'll proceed with the next speaker, Professor Stella Ivellum. She's a professor at the London University of Social and Political Sciences, Department of Economic and Industrial Development.
I would like also to thank my Professor Moropoulou, my dearest friend, Professor Moropoulou, and collaborator also for this invitation. I take the opportunity to speak about another kind of cultural heritage, maritime and underwater cultural heritage, for one reason more, because the national strategy for the marine space, as Mr. Arabvosi said this morning, is in the hands of the Prime Minister and is going to be under public consultation until the end of the year. The general view of marine space is gradually shifting away from something simply to be protected from exploitation and degradation towards a place of opportunity and investment, both in traditional as well as emerging economic sectors. This shift can not only generate benefits, of course, but also entails severe threats for the underwater cultural heritage. Furthermore, each sea basin, I am supporting, I have a position of Eastern Mediterranean Sea Basin expert, and I'm supporting four states, Croatia, Greece, Cyprus, and Slovenia, for elaborating their maritime special plans. And I have noticed that some sea basins like the Baltic Sea, for example, seem to have a strong cooperation efforts in their common history, while the common history and culture of others, like the Mediterranean, are rather more fragmented when it comes to the possibility of achieving common goals. Everybody knows that. Taking this into account, I will attempt to present some general principles that are valid to all countries, irrespective of their individual context, and then offer concrete case studies, more or less, and try to illustrate the lessons learned from them. Understanding, recognizing, and utilizing underwater cultural heritage is a sensitive asset in the marine, as a sensitive asset in the marine space, and reconciling its preservation and promotion within the sustainable blue economy perspective is nowadays a real challenge. I have recently co-authored, together with my counterpart in the Western Mediterranean, Mr. Yves Enoch, a handbook for the European Commission that explores challenges linked to the incorporation of UCH into the maritime spatial planning process, and examines the different modes of the incorporation into maritime spatial plans. Given the wide-ranging benefits of incorporating UCH into MSP, the audience, MSP stands for Maritime Spatial Planning, okay? The audience for this handbook is likely to be broad, including public administrative bodies responsible for establishing maritime spatial plans, the MSP authorities, local authorities and stakeholders, knowledge providers, professionals, consultants, maritime archaeologists also, and their institutions running UCH research programs to raise awareness on the drivers, added values, barriers, and impacts of integrating UCH into MSP processes. And also the general public, of course, willing to understand how MSP decisions are made and to engage with an integrated vision of the benefits that a planning with culture and nature approach may have on the environment, health, culture, and well-being. What is an MSP? The MSP process, everybody perhaps knows, but very, very briefly, I will give a definition. MSP is a step-by-step approach, a public process of analyzing and allocating the spatial and temporal distribution of human activities in marine areas to achieve ecological, economic, social objectives that are usually specified through a political process. In contrast with land planning, maritime spatial planning has to address the principle of the sea as common, because in the land planning starts from the position of a single user exclusivity through land ownership. So here we see the sea is common, which means balancing. We have to balance priorities amongst multiple users who all have a right of access and use over the same space. And they compete over this same space. Another key attribute of the sea, that is surface, water column, and seabed, is that it is not homogeneous. Different places at sea have different attributes, making them more or less attractive to different users. In any case, however, whichever human activities and interests are present in the sea, it can be considered as one vast interconnected ecosystem. Concerning the relationship of planning, of this maritime planning and underwater cultural heritage, we would say that MSP is about the relationship between people, society, and the sea. This is also the relationship that maritime archaeologists try to understand from a historical perspective. Therefore, the MSP process can benefit from an understanding of the historic environment, including engagement with coastal and maritime archaeologists. However, the increasing and usually unplanned development of human activities and infrastructure at sea is not only threatening marine ecosystems with severe and sometimes irreversible impacts, but also known and unknown UCH. To address this challenge, MSP has recently become a global priority. The radical change of MSP from a sectoral-based approach to a multi-sectoral, place-based topokendriki approach aimed at co-organizing human activities to avoid conflicts and create synergies is hugely important. It is also a great opportunity for UCH, which, like marine ecosystems themselves, is now experiencing growing pressure and threats due to emerging and developing maritime activities. The greatest challenge, I would say, regarding UCH, underwater cultural heritage, will be how to reconcile the development of the sustainable blue economy with UCH preservation and promotion, as I said before. In other words, how UCH should be harmoniously incorporated into the MSP process. By acknowledging the existence of a cultural capital and also, in this case, maritime cultural capital, accordingly, and the interconnection of natural and human cultural systems, government, resource managers, and planners, and the public, of course, can conceptualize cultural heritage as a product of human interaction with the natural environment and analyze the goods and services provided by cultural heritage assets. Also encourage science and educational activities and support economic activities such as leisure, tourism, scuba diving, wreck diving, etc., and other blue growth activities. Another issue, very important, is the classification and valuation of underwater cultural heritage in order to identify sites and objects that must be prioritized in MSP. Some examples from other countries. In Germany, UCH is taken into consideration during spatial planning, but as of yet, there are no designated areas in the maritime spatial plans corresponding to the exclusive economic zones in the Northern Baltic Sea. UCH is only considered in strategic environmental assessment, though, when assessing the impact of other uses on UCH. However, a general remark is that federal states are more active, than the federal government. in incorporating UCH in MSP. In Lithuania, the revised law on territorial planning includes stipulations on sea space planning, and UCH is characterized as a current use in spatial planning. Designation of the coastal zone as a vulnerable area within MSP regarding UCH as a distinct sector, this is important, is under discussion also in Lithuania. In Finland, which is pioneer state, cultural values and significant underwater natural values are designated in the Maritime Special Plan, and the issue of underwater landscape, cultural landscape, as Professor Moraitis said, following the provisions of the European Landscape Convention, is emphasized by the Finnish Heritage Agency. The latter continuously promotes the idea of underwater landscape and works in cooperation with different international Baltic Sea level, national and regional authorities, organizations, diving associations, and NGOs. The agency also focuses on divers, considering them as a valuable stakeholder. Although Finland has not yet ratified the convention, the 2001 Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage, the country's operations are already strongly guided by the convention. In France, in all sub-regions, the coastal and maritime heritage inventory remains fragmented. More specifically, regarding the so-called underwater archaeological heritage, there is only one atlas concerning the southern region. In Poland, during the MSP processes, there is evidence of awareness raising concerning the UCH as a distinct sector. Furthermore, the Baltic Rim project, a project that has been presented 2 years ago here in the same hospitable foundation, and some other UCH-related processes have greatly contributed to incorporating UCH into MSP in Poland. This can be verified in the MSP processes currently under development. The final Baltic Rim report, there is a precious report of this project, makes explicit reference also. And please take care of this, take attention, we should stress the attention on this, to the promotion of the concept of multi-use with regard to the triplet, MCH, UCH, environmental protection, nature conservation, that is within marine protected areas, for example, and underwater tourism. So three activities, including the underwater cultural heritage, harmoniously coexisting in the marine space. I have to omit some, because I'm aware of time. So I would say that for the moment, there is still limited incorporation of UCH into MSP, and there are still substantial differences at the sea basin level and at the national and regional levels. It is crucial, however, to reconcile and balance sustainable blue economy with UCH preservation, and so far UCH is considered under a silo approach by maritime archaeologists or heritage professionals that often disregard its potential for assisting local and regional authorities, regional sustainable development goals. Literature strongly associating UCH with risks and challenges related to the blue economy is still very limited also. I will also go to some, let's say, recommendations. Finally, the most important challenge is how to build bridges and synergies between the world of archaeology in order to succeed in this operation and the one of maritime spatial planning. at the level of both authorities and of individual scientists and practitioners. More specifically, evidence-based training programs for planners should start with major contributions from MCH, UCH authorities. Planners should be allowed to have free access to underwater cultural heritage registers, which is not the situation now. Data and maps should be easily accessible and downloadable in user-friendly formats. And funding also should be ensured by European programs for capacity building of both professional groups, maritime archaeologists and planners, on how to integrate MCH, UCH into MSP. There are also other recommendations, but I think this was mostly important. I will conclude, ladies and gentlemen, with a vision. Tourism is often perceived as a threat to the conservation of cultural heritage. In fact, tourism is a platform and a vehicle for interpreting and presenting heritage to the public, conserving it and warranting its economic and social sustainability. Current discourse, however, on the relationship between tourism and heritage emphasizes a major review of the interrelationships between tourism and heritage. A key aspiration is the deconstruction of ancient concepts and the reconstruction of a new collaborative paradigm based on present challenges and constructive and complementary synergies to equally ensure the endurance, resilience, and sustainability of both heritage and tourism. Heritage tourism is a vision particularly important for tourism-dependent local communities also, and the exploitation of UCH in combination with nature conservation is also expected to increase the number of tourists visiting an area for its natural and cultural heritage, thus enriching the locally offered tourism product with a heritage dimension. In this way, the efficient assemblage of UCH-driven multi-use can confirm an emerging trend that views heritage on the one side and tourism on the other hand as two reciprocally supported social phenomena that are co-produced. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor.
I tried to be very brief because I was asked to do so.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Very interesting indeed. Now I will proceed to our last, but of course not least, speaker of this session, the rapporteur of this session, Mr. Nikolaos Kampanis, from the Coastal and Marine Research Laboratory of Forth. Mr. Kampanis.
So the protection of monuments against climatic change and the sea level rise and storm waves is very important. Coastal monuments, we can find they are dense around us because Greece is mostly an islandic state. So we can find them through the urban, near the urban areas, near rural areas, but also near infrastructures. So the question always is, can I design some intervention which will protect the coastal heritage? And if this can be aligned with increase of use and of use in nearby areas, and this sometimes act cyclically, because when you increase uses, then you increase income sometimes, so you can invest back and so on. But there is always the threat that there is an overuse of the heritage. In many cases, we can, for example, in the area, the coastal area of Heraklion, we have worked with the monument of Koules, how to protect it and create, you know, there is always problem with huge waves, which always increase the intensity and the force. With tedious monitoring and effective modeling, we have arrived to design specific interventions which provide safety for the monument itself, but also provide safe accessibility to people. So this is an increase of tourism, increase the visits, but also gives some advantage to the nearby areas and the economic development. There is also cases like the port of Rethymnon, where the Venetian part of the port is encircled somehow with modern breakwaters. Now there is a need to protect, because extreme weather phenomena tends to more and more to threaten the monument, the old Venetian port. If we protect, then we give extra access, however, to the use of the modern breakwater and this part of the port, so this may act as a cone for the monument itself. So there is always this question: preserve, develop the surrounding areas. This increase the income, increase the use. So the use should be shown under a very thorough way. So you use more, but you also have to protect more. Also, there are rural areas like the well-known high touristic place of Crete, Eluda Bay, where coastal cultural heritage exists, but to protect, to protect the coastal heritage, you have always to intervene, but this is sometimes restricted by the very intense touristic development all around. So there is always question how to do it. You have to do it in a soft way, for example. These are cases where we have worked on. We have found solutions. The solutions itself give an advantage, but sometimes give a negative also, not a negative, but increase somehow the threat of the use of the area. And the use and the visiting around the cultural heritage site. There are questions that have to be answered. There are always thorough approach that can be applied, and always solution exists. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campanis, for keeping the time also. As you understand, we're running out of time, so I'm afraid there is no time for questions, and we have to close the session. I wonder if Professor Moropoulou want to say, to speak to close the session.
She's not here.
She's not here.
I may try to close the session.
The room.
I don't. Okay, fine. So I want to thank all the speakers, all the panel, and the audience. Also, I want to thank the organizers, and especially Professor Moropoulou, giving us this opportunity to exchange ideas and presentations. And I want to wish all of you good day and good afternoon. Thank you very much.